Hey guys! Just in time for the launch of the new expansion, Blizzard provided me the opportunity to interview the one and only Ion Hazzikostas. And for you guys, Blizzard is giving us a physical copy of the collector's edition of Dragonflight. For a chance to win this, subscribe to my channel and leave a comment below on what you would ask Ion Hazzikostas. For more info on the giveaway, check the description. And with that said, I hope you enjoy the video. All right. Hello, Ion.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down today and talk about WoW and Dragonflight.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
My name is Annie. I'm a streamer from Sweden. I play a lot of World of Warcraft. I'm a bit nervous, but I'm really glad to be here to have this opportunity to talk to you, Ion, who is, very well known in the community. And I'm sure everyone who's going to be watching is going to know you. But for those who may not, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Ion Hazzikostas. I am game director on World of Warcraft. I've been game director for just over 6 years now, and been on the World of Warcraft team for 14 years, and been playing for 18. So it's been really, World of Warcraft has been central to the better part of my life at this point. And yeah,
that's awesome. Thank you. Let's just jump into the questions then. My first one, touching the Fated raids. I think the Fated raids have been a massive success from all sorts of different kinds of players. I've been hearing a lot of positive feedback on their experience with it. So much better than, how in the past it may have been a season that's been lasting for too long with not too much to do. And now we get a bonus season, a new season of Mythic Plus, a new season of PvP, and also to rediscover and re-experience the previous tiers of the expansion. My question to you is, what do you look to improve or change for the future? For example, a thought that I had was potentially bringing back older expansion raids into being fated.
That's a great question. Yeah, overall, we're really happy with how season 4 has played out, and it is exactly as you said. We know that I think it's by design. It's a shorter season. It's a different sort of experience. It's kind of a remix, a greatest hits look back at the expansion as a whole. As we all know that we're moving on to something new very soon, and because of the way our development cycles work, the last raid tier would otherwise tend to last longer. And so this is something the team came up with. So instead of having, 8 months in Sepulchre, we could have 5 months in Sepulchre and then 3 months just taking a grand world tour. I think it's something we are pretty likely to repeat in the future in some form. I don't know that Fated as the exact framing will be the right fit if we do it again. I think that was, themed around the progenitors and their powers and kind of tied to the story of Shadowlands. But some form of, revisiting all the raids with a bit of a remix, a bit of a twist makes sense. We love the idea of revisiting old content and finding ways to keep that relevant. But at the same time, I think we want to be careful about, how we do that, just keeping in mind the fidelity of that content just visually and, how potentially confusing it might be for players, particularly in the raid setting where, unlike a dungeon where we use revisit old dungeons now in current season 4 and future Dragonflight seasons, you can learn an old dungeon that you've never done pretty quickly. It's, a 20-30 minute experience, 40 minutes on your first time. Whereas when you look back at old raids, there may be a very big difference between people who did those raids when they were current and those who've never done them and have to basically do completely fresh progress from scratch on a limited schedule. That may be more stressful than what we really are aiming for with this type of season. We do want to continue to expand our time walking raids as a system, as a way of, revisiting that old content in a bit more, stress-free, light way. One thing we definitely want to improve, I think one area where we just kind of let our players down with season 4 is outdoor focused players. If you were focused on dungeons, if you're a raider, if you PvP, it was a great new season with rewards to chase. If you're someone who mostly plays in the outdoor world, I guess you had a world boss every week. And other than that, it was just a few more months of Zereth Mortis. So I think that if we do this sort of season again, we would definitely want to include a meaningful outdoor component so that there's progression for all of our players.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's nice to hear that you guys are trying to think about all the different kinds of players. And it's a good point. Bringing back an old raid would feel quite stressful since it is usually, or it seems like it would be a shorter season naturally. So that actually does make sense. I noticed the Shadowlands raid portals, the ones that you unlock when you clear them on Fated Mythic. I noticed that they're account wide. I was happy and unexpectedly discovered on my alts that I had those portals there. And my question to you is, how come the portals that you get for completing Mythic Plus 20 dungeons, how come those are not account wide?
It's I agree it's a little bit of a quirk. It can seem like an inconsistency. I think philosophically, the vast majority of things these days that are cosmetic or utility are account wide. Really, some of the only exceptions have been some of the very highest end PvP rewards and some of the very highest end dungeon rewards, going all the way back to challenge mode armor and weapons from Mists. And in some ways, Mythic Plus is the successor to that system. The original philosophy there is some of the sense that, the class that you completed that accomplishment on when you're in a small scale PvP or dungeon setting is very important. And that when you're showing off some benefit, whether it's, a unique mount or having access to a teleport like this, it's a reflection on the fact that you did it as a mage or you did it as a priest, where in a raid group, it's inherently just a larger, more cooperative endeavor. I realize that reasoning is pretty flimsy. I think to some extent it's like this because it's always been like this. And it's definitely the sort of thing that we could revisit as we look to the future, particularly if we do these types of things more often.
Yeah, and this is why I was surprised to see it. I did not expect the raid ones to be account wide either. So that's why the question came up. So it's interesting. I'd be happy to see some, potential more account wide looks on that as well. Another little bit more general thing here is over time, I've found myself removing add-ons for significant in-game updates. So for example, with Shadowlands, the notable one for me was the auction house revamp. And now with Dragonflight, we have the UI updates. That for me meant that I removed a lot of my add-ons, especially the ones that were, on action bars. My question was if you have any other features that you would be happy to talk about or share that might, potentially replace some other popular add-ons.
This is something we're actually kind of eagerly listening to community feedback around. And it's exactly discussions like these, feeling like the new UI is great, but it has this one flaw that I feel like I need to fix with an add-on, or there's this one thing missing. And we want to get a sense of what the kind of, most common examples of those are to help inform where we focus our future efforts so it benefits the most people. One example off the top of my head, which is pretty small, but I think it is something probably missing from our UI, is the ability to view or interact with like the common map coordinate systems that a lot of add-ons use. Or if you go to Wowhead, it ends up being it's something that like you often just see players commonly sharing these around. And if you're not using a specific add-on, you don't know what they mean or how to interact with them. And while it's something that, was never a basic part of the game, it's become so widespread that it feels like players more broadly would benefit from being able to have that. Otherwise, I think the one thing that we're not looking to do, first off, add-ons remain a key part of WoW. We want to make sure players have the ability to customize their experience. That's not going away. Things like, DBM or bigwigs, or, fully sort of informational, computational problem-solving add-ons, that's not something we're looking to replicate with the base UI. We're looking, we want to provide that information, certainly things that weak auras might do in terms of making it more obvious when you've had a class proc fire or when a boss is about to use an ability. Those sorts of things, yes, the base UI should do adequately. But things that are like putting markers over enemies' heads or helping, assign or solve a problem, that feels like it would almost be defeating the purpose of the puzzles we present if the game solved them for you.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Actually, I was thinking in terms of the things that you just mentioned with weak auras, like being able to customize how you see your procs, for example. I think that would be really interesting. So yeah, that's an answer I like. So good to hear. Good to hear. Another general question, sort of. I've noticed the accessibility improvements in the game over the last couple expansions. We have the recent controller support updates. We have the directional targeting system that's coming in Dragonflight, and the interact with target keybind, which I just recently discovered and played around with. So my question is WoW coming to console in Dragonflight?
No plans for that at this point. I think there's a lot. WoW is a game that at its core was designed for PC, and that's not just the interface; it's also how it's delivered, and even including things like add-ons. But a lot of the focus on controller support really has been with an eye towards accessibility, and people who have a challenging time using keyboard and mouse controls, but can use a wide variety of accessibility controllers if we support them. And so we're just very excited to have been able to do, more and more of that.
Yeah, no, it's been really nice to see because, as you say, there's people who use a controller by a PC. People have potentially the setup connected to a big monitor, so it's nice to see that being able to go back and forth between keyboard, mouse, and controller as well. So something that's inventory related. Shadowlands came with a lot of items in the game, which bloats our inventory quite a bit. I saw a wiki page the other day that listed 100 different anima item sources. Not sure how accurate that is, but many of them which contain an identical amount of anima even. And then we also had the research items in Korthia and several Covenant-specific items, such as the seeds for the Queen's Conservatory. So my question is, are you guys planning to be a bit nicer to our bags in Shadowlands? In Dragonflight.
Yes. Yes. I think it's something we experience as pain points ourselves. And, one of the ways we have to deliver progression systems or collections or whatever ends up being inventory. The challenge is when 6 or 7 different systems or multiple designers are doing things that involve putting items in your bags, suddenly, you're overwhelmed. One of the big things we've done in Dragonflight is adding the all new reagent bag to pull all of that stuff completely out of the inventory space into its own very large, section. And I think that should go a long way towards helping. But ultimately, we need to just be careful with the systems that we design, with the outdoor loops, because often if you're just killing things around the world and before you know it, your bags are full, we're right back where we started, even if we gave you more space.
Yeah. I did notice the reagent back, and I really like it because it does affect things like, for example, the crafting materials in Zereth Mortis. I noticed how they immediately went into that, so that was really nice to see. Good change. Moving on to a bit more to do with achievements and collecting. So as someone who recently hit 100% achievements this expansion and will be attempting to reach 100% in Dragonflight, there's one achievement I'm looking at, the 2000 pets collected achievement. So I'm nearly missing 500 pets, and I have all of the ones that are currently obtainable. And my question is, are we going to hit this in Dragonflight?
That's a good question. It's something we need to revisit. We need to make sure, so some of those may have been made just kind of forward looking, anticipating where we were going to go. But philosophically, there should not be achievements in the game that aren't currently earnable. Like, even if it wasn't going to be earnable until, let's say, patch 10.2 or whatever, we still should have that in the game before it's possible to get it. So we're definitely going to look back at those numbers.
Oh, interesting. So even if it's obtainable later in the expansion, it would still not be in the game yet, so to say.
Like, philosophically, yes. I mean, I think, coming from your perspective, right? Like, it's not fair to have this thing dangling in front of you that you can't quite read what you do. It's like, all right, you're at 99.8% completion because there's an impossible one. Just wait. That's not how the system should work.
Okay, gotcha. Because in contrast, I was looking at the mount achievement, which is a lot lower than what is currently obtainable. So I found that contrast interesting. But if you guys are looking into revisiting that, then it already kind of answers my question.
Yeah, with the mount one, I mean, I think we're looking at, just how many people, what percentage of players, what number of players have, certain numbers of mounts. We also want to be very mindful when it comes to mounts in particular. There are many that are no longer earnable. There are also many that are promotional items that from the shop or collector's editions or whatever. We don't want to create an achievement tier that feels like you have to have either these ungettable things or these promotional mounts in order to achieve it. And so while yes, for some, hardcore collectors, they're way beyond the 500 mark, we want to make sure that we're not, setting the bar in a place that feels unfair to people who are coming along today and starting to chase it.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Back to pets a little bit. Do you see a world where we could potentially play our pet battles on mobile, for example, when traveling to work? If the functionality was added to mobile where you could also progress your achievements, like there's one very popular one, the 5,000 PvP pet battle one. I think it could maybe increase participation. Or what are your thoughts on this?
I agree. Honestly, I would love to see it. I think there have been a number of technical challenges that we're still working through. It's an idea that comes up frequently that there's excitement about, but I think there's just questions of like what form it would take. Something that the mobile app doesn't do currently is like rendering actual 3D assets and pulling creatures and spell visuals and stuff into that mobile package, because again, it's just a very different technical framework. So we'd have to change a bunch of things to make it work. But completely understand the value there. Like it feels like something that, if you want to play WoW, but you're not at your computer, you can
Yeah.
make progress in the system. It feels like a good fit and something we continue to talk about.
That's awesome to hear. Because yeah, it would be nice to be able to progress the little things while you're not playing, like the way that you've had missions in the past. I think it's great. All right. Then back to mounts again. Shadowlands added many more mounts than any other expansion in the past. I think the number might be around the same as Legion and BFA combined or something. It's starting to get difficult to spot rare mounts from a vendor or reputation mount, especially when many of them are, potentially recolors of the same model. And so what are your thoughts on mounts being recognizable, such as, popular in the past ones like Amani Warbear or Invincible?
So yeah, there's a few pieces to that. Definitely Shadowlands had a lot of mounts. Some of that was the nature of the Covenant system and kind of times like multiplying everything by 4. Particularly early on when there was more of the sense of like pick your path, you wanted each of them to feel really complete unto itself. And then of course, as players were able to move among all of them more freely, that just became a very, very large space of not just mounts, but transmog and all the other cosmetics as well. With recolors, I think we try when possible to keep recolors at least thematically consistent in terms of where they come from, what type of activity, so that if possible, when you see someone on a mount, you at least know what portion of the game it came from. And the recolors are often available just for pure aesthetic reasons. You want something, you have a Mog that is a specific color prominently. It's nice if we make the mount available that matches it. We do, when it comes to particular, prestige mounts in particular, we very much want to avoid too many versions of those or reusing them in other places until a lot of time has passed. Again, so that if you see someone on, the Death Elemental, that they got Keystone Master. And it's like, yes, there's different colors for different seasons, but it's very clear, like that mount means dungeon achievement. Same thing for, end of raid mythic mounts. We avoid reusing those until a significant amount of time has passed. So it's striking a balance, but I think where possible, players who are clued in should be able to look at someone's mount and recognize, oh, you did this impressive thing to get it. And where that's not the case, it's something for us to keep working on.
Yeah, because I do agree. I think the KSM mount does stick out, different colors for different seasons. Same with gladiator mounts. And I think the mythic mount drops are also good. But yeah, I think in other places, sometimes like rare drops or vendor reputation, I think there's a little more blurring there a lot, especially in Shadowlands. So it's nice to hear that you guys will, keep that in mind, maybe also for the future as well. And following up on that, I have a question about a system of mount dies. So having a way to have fewer mounts overall, but having a way to then unlock dies instead, maybe similar to a Legion artifact weapon system. Is that something that you guys have come across as an idea?
It's an idea that comes up. It's a suggestion we definitely hear. Right now, it's not one that's consistent with how our items and mounts and just visual assets are built, both artistically and from an engineering pipeline perspective. Because it's not, WoW is known as having a painterly style, which often means, sort of the literal vibe of brushstrokes and multiple combined colors in different sections, such that it's not like, oh, this piece of the shoulder pad or this piece is just solid purple or solid green and we can swap those out. And because of that nuance, it's challenging to just say, okay, replace this color with that color and have it actually functionally work. That said, we recognize and we hear loud and clear the desire for more and more and more customization. And that's in all avenues, whether it's the dragon riding mounts that we now have, whether it's creating your Drakthir, we want more depth, more variety. And that's an approach we want to continue to bring to all facets of the game.
I really like that because that also then touches on the idea of potentially having dies for transmog as well. And I think especially in transmog, that's when it's most complicated with different colors and stuff. It feels like a nice idea to be able to just unlock those by getting the dies themselves. So that's why I wanted to see what you had to say about that. So thank you for the answer.
Absolutely. And that could definitely be cool. I think it's something that we're going to continue to talk about, but nothing specific to announce right now.
Okay. Another kind of big question, my last big question on collecting. So I would feel that it would be cool to be able as a collector to progress other professions than your main 2. But currently the punishment for dropping a profession means that you'd lose your recipes, potentially the unobtainable ones. And I understand the idea of, people having different professions for social and economic reasons. But is there a way to maybe restore the previously learned recipes without affecting other people?
That's something that is challenging, but that we want to make happen. It's just a question of prioritizing it against, developing other new systems and things that, how many players does it benefit? I mean, personally, myself, speaking as a player,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
in the
niche.
same boat. Like, I picked the character I play is, have a blacksmithing profession that isn't super beneficial to my character personally. I picked it up back when my guild was doing Molten Core, literally 17 years ago, so I could make all the rare dark iron stuff. And I have like original vanilla Naxxramas recipes. And it's like, I'm never going to drop blacksmithing because
Yeah.
we have things that are impossible to ever get again.
Mhm.
Would be nice if I could change. Completely understand where the desire comes from. It's just competing against things like making the new profession system that we're
Gotcha.
excited to roll out to everybody in Dragonflight. But
Mhm.
I think it's something that we genuinely want to tackle, and it's not a this is never going to happen thing. It's just a question of when.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I look forward to hopefully one day being able to do that. On the topic of mounts that become unobtainable later, like Gladiator, Keystone, Master, Ahead of the Curve, has the idea, or what do you guys feel about potentially some of those coming back, maybe several expansions later?
I think that's very unlikely.
Very unlikely. Mhm.
Some of those particular mounts, those rewards, titles in the same vein exist at times to mean you were there, you did the thing, and if you missed it, you missed it. The vast majority, like 99% plus of all of the
Mhm.
rewards across World of Warcraft of every type are things that you can go back and get years later. You can go back and kill old Mythic Raid bosses and get their titles. You can farm up their mounts. But there is a handful of things in the space that really are about, you were part of an experience. And if you see
Mhm.
someone with it, you know that they did it while it mattered. And so we don't want to expand that space too much, but I think we're likely to preserve it as it stands.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's one of the popular questions I hear from new players, especially the Ahead of the Curve mounts. So I totally understand your point. I just wanted to bring it forward to see what you'd say on it. So I think we're nearing the end, but I thought maybe I'd just throw some real quick questions. Achievement. It's over 9,000. Are we going to get another one for a higher number?
Are there any other meme numbers above that? I mean, let me know. I can think of a couple. They're maybe not so appropriate for a T14 rated
I
game.
wasn't going to mention that.
But
yeah, we're not quite there yet. But
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I guess there's no numbers around 30, no meme exactly. So, okay, so meme numbers, that's what it is, basically. That's what it takes.
Pretty much. That was 100%
Gotcha. Gotcha. RBGs for groups of 5 to 6 people.
Yes, I think BGs, the size of BGs, is something we're definitely looking at and talking about a lot. I think looking at effectively solo queue in the form of rated solo shuffle is an interesting experiment. That may lead to something in a similar space in Battlegrounds down the line. It's something we've heard a lot from the community. So stay tuned. We'll have more to talk about later on in Dragonflight.
Cool, nice. Import-export features now in the game and talents and such. Are we going to get one for sharing our customization of the Dracthyr?
That's something we'd like to do. It's come up a lot, actually. People who either have spent 15 minutes making their Dracthyr and then realize they picked the wrong faction, or something comes up and they have to back out and they're like, I had it perfect, I want to save this. Or you see someone else's and you want to copy the setup. That's something we're going to look into.
Cool. Yeah, I found myself making 2 Dracthyrs on 2 separate servers, and I'm like, it would be nice if I could just copy it. Final question. Which dragon aspect would you rather be stranded on an island with, and why?
Would we really be stranded with any of them? They're all dragons that can fly. Like, how do you get stuck on an island if you're a dragon?
Maybe there's invisible walls. Okay, you can't get out.
Well, okay, then my very serious answer is going to be the future leader of the Black Dragonflight.
Oh, okay. Good answer. Awesome. Well, thank you. And I think that is the end of our time together. Thank you so much, Ian, for taking your time to talk about stuff. This has been really exciting for me. I was very nervous about this, but it started feeling better as further into the interview we got. So yeah, thank you so much.
It was a complete pleasure chatting. So thank you for the great questions.
Thank you.